Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. And now your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hi, hey, and hello, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 11. It is the final episode for this season, so I'm going to take us back to review highlights of the conversations and the actions of this season. Now, you all know by now that my focus is on action taking, translating knowledge into action. So through this recap, be an action taker. What one new action will you take today? So in episode 1, Life's Purpose, I talked to Cheryl Chapman about how to find your why. Having a purpose in life is part of your survival mechanism. You live longer if you live with purpose. So what does purpose even mean?
Blah, 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 find your why. So what do we mean by why? We start asking that question. So two things for me. The why is your big reason for being on the planet. Like really big, like why are you actually even here having this human experience in this body right now? And then the second why is why are you where you are right now? And of course that brings in the elements of, what's potentially happened to you when you were younger. And it tends to be when you're younger, but not exclusively. That may well mean that you're not living at your 100%, if you like. But also, what are you doing that's absolutely freaking awesome? Because it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. You can use what you know is brilliant, why you're where you are in terms of like accolades or whatever it is that you do really great, and bring the two together. And that why is really important, because I think until you have knowledge, you don't know you don't know. So what's holding you back? So the why for me is the passion, the purpose, the reason why you're on the planet.
Cheryl gives you 3 useful actions. Firstly, know your why feeling. When do you get that ready brick glow? Feel that warmth and contentment when you make a decision, and ask yourself, is this going to give me my why feeling? Go towards that decision if it gives you that feeling. Secondly, visualize having already achieved what you want to achieve. Visualization is a very powerful tool that puts you in a place of action. It moves you away from fear. And thirdly, ask yourself, what happens if I don't do what I have set up to do? What is the cost of inaction? Episode 2, Identity. I talked to Neil Seligman, the conscious professional, about uncovering the leader within you. Are you a leader?
And he's founder of the Conscious Professional. It's a consultancy through which Neil provides coaching and workshops and keynotes, and he's an incredible speaker. So welcome, Neil. I'm really delighted to be chatting to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here speaking with you, Alka.
Oh, amazing. Well, look, we're talking about your favorite topic and a key topic for me as well, which is leadership. Now, I know that there will be many people listening today who will probably naturally identify as leaders, and I guess most commonly by virtue of job roles or career positions. So CEO or manager or business partner lends itself to that role, that identity of leader, doesn't it? But I think there'll also be others who might not automatically use the word leader to describe themselves. And I'm thinking about parents here, because there are commonalities between parenting and leadership. So the first question I probably wanted to kick off with, Neil, is what is your definition of a leader?
So that's a great question. Actually, in the introduction to my book, I talk about the fact that we're all leaders. Every single person, at least within my definition, is a leader, because it is the human being's job to lead themselves through the narrative of their life. So it's not just about, how many people report into us, whether that be our 2 children that are sort of looking at us and looking for the way to get through life, or whether it's our team of 10 or 10,000 that, we're working with in a business setting. There's this aspect of self-leadership, which is really primary in a life lived well. And so I think leadership is something that we can learn to embrace from whichever part of the journey that we're on.
We're all leaders, and we can all go on a journey of self-leadership. If you have a business or a career, it can be beautiful and creative, but it needs to arise from a place that is aligned to the life force of being human. Mindfulness is what gives you a map, pointing an arrow into your inner human experience to notice that you have a world of thoughts and feelings and sensations to allow you to understand the dynamic process of what we call life. So 3 actions for you to uncover the leader within you. Number 1, do you remember the FHB practice? Remember this: feet on floor, hand on heart, body on breath. Take your awareness to your feet on the floor. Just feel the ground beneath you. Put your hand on your heart and you'll immediately realize you're alive. Feel the warmth, and then bring your awareness to your breath. Number 2, do a gratitude practice. This is so liberating. Just write down 3 things that made you feel grateful. This is a way to reduce the automatic negativity bias of your brain, and it shifts you from scanning for danger to a redirect to what is good and what makes you smile, and allows this to reach you. And number 3, take care of your limiting I am statements. What does this mean? Your limiting I am statement, well, have you ever said, I'm so disorganized, I'm so lazy, I'm always angry? Move this negative statement into the past tense, or release it into a potential. I am so disorganized becomes, I used to be disorganized. I wonder if I am more organized now. Just take care of your language. Episode 3 on food is a conversation with the masterful Dr. Dean Ornish about how to reverse disease with food. Food is medicine. Do not doubt the power of food in reversing so many diseases, heart disease being a good example.
How simple lifestyle changes can reverse most chronic disease. And the exciting thing is that this bestseller has just been published in paperback. So it really is one to get your hands on right now. So Dr. Ornish, welcome. I really am truly honored and excited to be in your company today.
Oh, well, Dr. Patel, right back at you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So come on, let's get straight into it. Let me ask you a question. Is food really that powerful, so powerful that it makes disease disappear? Let's hear it.
Well, I think you've kind of hit a really important point, because I think the biggest obstacle that I've found in the 40 years of doing this work is that people think, oh, diet and lifestyle, that's kind of boring. How powerful could that be? It has to be something really high tech and expensive to be powerful, a new drug, a new laser, a new device, a new surgical procedure. And I think our unique contribution, my colleagues and I, has been to use these very high-tech, expensive, state-of-the-art scientific measures to prove how powerful these very simple and low-tech and low-cost interventions can be. And the more diseases we study and the more evidence we look at, the more impressed I am by how powerful these simple changes in lifestyle can be, and how quickly people can feel better or worse, depending on what they're doing, in ways we can actually measure. So, we were the first to prove that heart disease could be reversed by changing diet and lifestyle. In fact, everything we've done over the last 4 decades was thought impossible at the time. And that's one of the reasons why I've spent so much of my adult life doing research, because it's really hard doing these studies. It's hard to get them funded. It's hard to get them conducted, and a lot of bureaucracy and so on. But what makes it worth doing is that properly done, and with the leading collaborators and published in the leading peer-reviewed journals, is we can redefine what's possible. And by doing so, we can often give many people new hope and new choices they didn't have before.
Dr. Ornish gives us 3 clear actions. Firstly, to reverse disease and live longer, move to a plant-based focus. What does this mean? It means eating whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, food that is as close to food as it comes in nature, food that is naturally low in sugar and naturally low in fats. Secondly, spend time with friends and family, experience the joy of living and connecting, and not the fear of dying. And thirdly, pay attention to how you feel with whatever changes you make. Whatever you do has a corresponding benefit. If it is pleasurable and meaningful, you'll do more of it. So try and remember this: what I gain is more than what I give up. Episode 4, Exercise. I'm talking to Martin Sharp about making fitness focused and fun. It's really useful to just take a pause here and ask yourself, what does fitness mean to me? I mean, actually mean to you, without being influenced by stereotypical images of fitness. And remember, fitness can be fun even if you're focused on specific fitness goals.
Is so important because it does give you that focus, doesn't it? But there's also something about feeling, isn't there? There's an emotion that's attached to fitness and health and lifestyle and those activities that we do. And I wonder whether there's actually also a missing emotion a lot of the time. And that missing emotion is fun. Because we're so focused on the focus and the reason, we sometimes lose that element of the fun emotion that comes with fitness. So back to the sort of and question, fitness can be focused and fun. How important do you think it is to bring that fun element into fitness?
It definitely is. It's about that kind of passion element, isn't it? And that's where it is, finding that piece of exercise that works for you. Now, some people, it's about being with a group. It's about that social element of it. It's about almost that little bit of competition, maybe in some cases. And that's what kind of brings the fun out of them. For others, they can't stand that idea of it. But the idea of actually saying that I'm using this space to give myself space and give myself time gives them that kind of calming effect, which actually gives them the fun element part of it. For some people, it is literally just the fun part of saying I'm competing against myself. I want to become the best version of who I am. And therefore, it's not a case of competing with anybody else. It's saying, actually, how can I be that little bit better, that kind of 1% better than I was last week or the day before? And kind of bringing those kind of things in. And that's why it's really personal and really a case of actually finding that one element that works for you. And then play with it. It really is a case of just playing with it. There's no hard and fast rules when it comes down to fitness and things. You don't have to do things in a very specific way to be able to gain results. There's different ways that different people are found to be able to do it, but play with them, find the ones that work for you.
No, I love that playful sense of having fun whilst you're reaching your fitness goals and being really focused on them as well, because everything can work together in that way, can't it? And, feeling is a real driver. It becomes its own motivator.
So Martin gives us 3 top actions to make fitness focused and fun. Firstly, focus on your core values and lend these values to your fitness routines. Secondly, find the playful elements. Connect fun to your goals to soften up those goals. And thirdly, make the time, prioritize the time for exercise and repair because it's important to you. Episode 5. In episode 5 on sleep, I have a conversation with Dragana Ragulia about why sleep is so critical.
Animal studies where people in the 80s first showed that if you deprive rats of sleep, they die prematurely. And there was nothing really obviously wrong with these animals, nothing that people could point to and say this is why they died. They seemed generally unhealthy, kind of wasted, even though they were eating a lot, and they die, again, not known why this happens. And then after that, as people brought sleep research into more simple animals like flies, showed the flies sleep, fruit flies sleep very similarly to the way that we sleep, it became clear from those studies too that insufficient sleep could lead to shortened survival. And then my lab a few years ago decided to really look at this very deeply and try to understand what it is that kills these animals. And we were able to show, I think pretty convincingly, that lack of sleep or insufficient sleep, not even complete lack, but just reducing the amount of sleep that you get, can shorten survival. And so while these studies have not been done in humans, I would say that we have all reasons to believe that something similar is actually true for humans as well, that sleep is really needed for health and survival.
Well, it's simple. Sacrificing sleep takes years off your life, full stop. And there's 3 actions here that Dragana gives us. Firstly, don't be fooled by the feeling of sleepiness. What this means is don't equate the feeling of sleepiness with the need for sleep. Even if you don't feel sleepy, you still need sleep. Remember, if you've lost your appetite, it doesn't mean that you don't need food. You still need food in just the same way. Just because you don't feel sleepy, you still need sleep. Secondly, eat fruit and food high in antioxidants. Well, why is this? Well, sleep deprivation results in the creation of reactive oxidation species in the gut, which then causes oxidation of tissues, which causes damage and premature death. And antioxidants can help remove these reactive oxidation species to reduce this damage. And thirdly, eat yogurt with friendly bacteria that can clear reactive oxidation species. Episode 6, Time Out. This is a wonderful conversation with Maggie Smith, the poet, about moving forward in the face of uncertainty. When we face uncertain times, perspective is what is so critical.
And instead of letting myself make a mental list of everything that's going wrong, trying to focus on what's going right. And that doesn't mean ignoring what's going wrong. I do think toxic positivity is real. You know, the idea of we only have to look at what's going well, good vibes only. I don't subscribe to that. I think we have to be realistic and live in the world that we live in. But what does it mean to get up in the morning and look at the parts of your life that are working? You know, really take time. And I think a journal is a great place to do that. But even if you don't have that handy, if you're commuting to work, taking some time in your mind even to tick off some things that are going well to help balance those scales. I think that little daily dose of hope and positivity, that does help, I think, us work that muscle in a concrete way.
It's important you said that, Maggie. Thank you for sharing that, because this idea that life is rosy actually creates its own stresses by itself, just that perception that I shall not suffer, and if I do, there's something wrong. Because inherently, as you said, life is painful. And this is what humanity is about. That's what being human involves. But sometimes it's that focus on the pain that elevates it even more than it actually needs to be.
At difficult times, find a way to connect with yourself every day. Try journaling or writing a letter to connect with your core, with your inner self. Writing is what gets it out of your body and helps with processing. Just try it. And ask yourself, what else is possible? Create a headspace of curiosity and possibility and openness rather than judgment and closed thinking. And find a way to be useful to another person. It doesn't take much to make another person's day better. Any little reach out. This will make you feel even better if your life feels stressful, knowing that you can do a small bit of good for someone else. Nothing is too small that it doesn't have meaning. In episode 7, Your Connections, I talked to John Howard about the link between connection and communication. So what comes first? Connecting to communicate or communicating to connect? Well, the answer is connect first. And why is this? It's because the brain is primarily concerned with security and safety. Connection is what establishes trust and goodwill and allows the mind to open and communicate far more easily, even if we have differences. Yes, words are important, of course, but non-verbal communication trumps this for deeper connections.
Concerned with safety and security first. Until it checks that box, it's not really interested in what someone has to say, especially if their ideas are somewhat foreign or different from what we believe. So connection is aimed at the nervous system. It settles that question of, can I really trust you? And am I safe with you? Whereas communication is aimed at the frontal lobes. It's a higher order conceptualization process. You have to interpret language to understand what it means. That causes the frontal lobes to work. And it's not as connected to the primitive parts of the nervous system that measure connection. So when you know how to connect first, in order to set up communication, you're talking to the nervous system, you're helping it feel safe and secure. And what happens is a rosy and positive interpretation of the words. You know, we all know what it's like when we don't really trust someone and we don't feel that safe with them. It doesn't really matter what they say. We're always highly suspicious, and we're going to take a negative, biased interpretation of what they're saying. But think about what it's like when you sit down with your best friend on the couch to just have a conversation. It doesn't really matter what words you use. You completely trust the goodwill in that relationship, and you interpret the words that way.
The quality of your relationships is a primary determinant of longevity. So take these actions to enhance deeper connection and communication. Firstly, practice. Practice good connection when interacting, and focus on creating trust and creating security instead of just focusing on the issues and the concepts and the ideas that you want to convey. And you can do this by using nonverbals, by using body language and eyes and tone to convey trust. And use touch and proximity in interactions when you can. Closing the distance changes the meaning of a conversation. And also remove distractions when communicating. Things like texts or watching the news or being on social media. This doesn't establish connection when you're with your most important people. So be present in the moment. Pay attention. Don't be distracted. Don't multitask. If you give someone your full attention, it then sends a message that they matter to you. Episode 8 is about learning habits. I speak to Dr. Loretta Bruning about harnessing your brain's happy chemicals to create happy habits. And we all need a regular dose, DOSE, of our happy chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, each which have a different evolutionary purpose.
I think we've heard it said quite often, haven't we, that our chemicals are what dictate us. And in particular, there's a group of chemicals that we often refer to as DOSE, D-O-S-E, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about this dose of happy chemicals that we seem to be governed by.
Sure. So I started writing about this 10 years ago, before anyone else did, when I noticed that these brain chemicals are inherited from earlier animals. And when you know what they do in animals, you see just familiar responses. And the fascinating thing is that animals can't restrain or second guess their responses. So they can't say, I wasn't thinking that. Whereas we humans have a separate verbal brain that's not aware of what our mammal brain is doing. So our happy chemicals flow for reasons that our verbal brain may not approve of. And they're not designed to flow all the time, because in the animal world, they turn on to reward you for action that promotes survival. And then they turn off, because that's their job, is to only turn on when you need that motivating push.
That's really interesting, because we've got this sense of the pursuit of happiness, and the sense that our reward chemicals and our happy chemicals should always be switched on. But you're saying that doesn't actually fit with how life is designed. Why is that?
Because each of the happy chemicals evolved to motivate behavior when you have an opportunity to meet a survival need. So if they were on all the time, they would not be motivating. A simple example is I love to go and visit monkeys wherever I can, and they have big signs, do not feed the monkeys. Because if the monkeys get used to being fed, then they won't search for food, and they'll actually lose the skill of searching for food. So when a monkey is hungry, looks for food, its happy chemicals turn on when it sees food. Then it gets more happy chemicals when it takes a step and another step. So those chemicals evolve to motivate action. If they were just on all the time, then you wouldn't take the action and meet your needs, which may remind you of a teenager, who maybe sits and expects to be happy without taking any action.
Yeah, okay. So I completely understand that. So there's something there around perhaps that survival instinct, which means that we've got to take action as well in what we do. So can you perhaps break down these 4 chemicals, which I know you write about extensively in your book, and just perhaps identify for us what part each of them play in our happiness, in our motivation, in our drive? What is it that they're each providing separately?
Sure. So dopamine is the good feeling that you're about to meet a need. So a simple answer would be that if you were thirsty in the desert and you saw an oasis in the distance, your dopamine would feel on and you would feel great. And that would actually provide the energy that you need to walk toward that oasis, even with great excitement, despite the fact that you're still just as dehydrated as you were a moment ago.
3 actions Dr. Bruning asks you to take to harness these chemicals so you can create habits with ease is to break your challenges into small chunks. Remember to reward yourself for your actions and create a short-term, middle-term and long-term goal, because dopamine is only stimulated when you get closer to your goals. So if your goal seems too far away, you won't have that dopamine release for continued motivation. In episode 9 on emotions, I talked to Laurie West about building mental fitness, which really comes from a place of being able to observe yourself so that you can then control how you respond to life and use personal responsibility as a position of power.
But being very intentional about what they're reflecting on. And the integration part is about integrating the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, the sensations, the attitudes, and the behaviors, starting to help people see that actually these neural pathways have a whole chain of events. So if you can start to recognize how a thought kicks off a whole chain of events, you can deconstruct the event itself and start to respond to life rather than react to life. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to actually collapse some of these neural pathways that are unproductive. And we've all got them because we've all made decisions about who we have to be, who other people ought to be, that actually limit us. So the idea is to deconstruct those and then create new ones that are actually more supportive of who we choose to be going forward. And for me, I'm really practical. Things have got to be easy to do and easy to apply. So I want to make it easy for people to, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't do mindfulness. And I'm like, mindfulness is not meditation. It's kind of a meditation, but it doesn't have to be. You don't need to sit in silence for half an hour. You can do this in a minute and have a whole new perspective on what you're dealing with. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Wonderful. And there's several aspects of that methodology that I absolutely love and really resonate with. So firstly, that intentionality of it, being really purposeful.
Yes.
And this sense of mindfulness in the moment. As you say, we've all got this sort of inner talk going on constantly, haven't we? But actually, when you start to notice it in that moment, you can then be very intentional about how you respond to that and then apply it and integrate it. So the I really is about being present in the moment, being intentional with how you're showing up. And that buzzword mindfulness is a really integral part of it. So that's incredible. I think that's a really, really useful and simple way of actually being able to do what it is you want to do, to show up how you want to show up as well, which is fabulous.
To start to take 100% responsibility for yourself, remove all expectation from yourself and start to integrate moments of reflection into your working day, remembering to mentally and physically breathe, both in and out. Build your mental fitness gradually, as you would any other type of fitness. And work with someone who can help you navigate your internal landscape, as it can occur initially as uncharted territory. And finally, in episode 10, I talked to Lee Sellers and Rosalind Adler from The Confidence People about imposter syndrome, that disconnect between perceived and actual performance. Now, with 12,800,000 Google search results, it is something that is commonly experienced. So what to do?
A fear of voicing your own thoughts. And as we know, particularly with women that we train, they're often afraid of voicing their own opinions, of finding their own voice of authority, if you like. And not celebrating success because it feels like bragging, or being dismissive of your own expertise. So it can lead to a waste of talent because you're not going for promotions and you're not putting your best foot forward, really. So it can mean missed opportunities and being risk averse. So it can have a lot of effects, but the underlying thing is often a fear.
And I think that fear is, again, something we probably, I would think the vast majority of us know about, which is the fear of not being enough or not being good enough. I think most people understand that feeling at some points in their lives. And also it leads to these comparisons with other people. And people often feel like outsiders if they feel they don't fit in with the prevalent culture, or they're the wrong gender, or they're the wrong age, or they're the wrong sexual orientation, or I'm using wrong in inverted commas here, background or class or education, all those things. And when Lee and I started out, we were training, and it still happens to some extent. We train men and women, but when we started out, we were focusing more on women, and a lot of them felt that they should. It's a devastating word for most imposters. They should be more like men. So there was this attempt to mimic what they felt was the correct model.
Yeah. So there is something from what you've just said about normalization in a way. As if you said, well, we all experience this at some point in our lives. And there's something important there, isn't there? Is that allowing that experience to just be part of you is okay, but it's when it starts to overtake and, as you said, Lee, holds you back, means that you do miss out on opportunities. That's really the time to think, well, this is now actually bigger than me, and it's a signal for me to do something about it. Because I think if we rush into I've got imposter syndrome at that first sense of, oh, I'm not feeling good enough, or, oh, what do people think about me? We again risk medicalizing or being over-diagnostic about what is a common human experience, the common emotions that we all fear.
And here are 3 ways to banish imposter syndrome. Firstly, recognize it in yourself. Be self-aware. Do any characteristics resonate? Perhaps a fear of not being good enough, or perhaps comparing yourself with others, feeling a fraud or a failure, or maybe that you'll be unmasked at any moment, or even that your success is due to luck, being dismissive of your capability. Then be willing to entertain other perspectives, because it is possible, of course, that others' good opinion of you is justified. And finally, keep a praise file to draw yourself back to your positives. And that, my friends, is a wrap for this season, a wealth of knowledge for you to take action on. So just choose one thing that's going to make a difference and see it through. Now, I'm on a 2-week break now as I prepare for the next season. And for the next season, I'm giving the Lifestyle First method a bit of a facelift with some changes in the key elements. And you'll hear me now talking more about the Lifestyle First formula as I really dive deep into the science of lifestyle change. And longevity and living longer is a passion of mine because I truly, truly believe that every human being has a significant contribution to make to the world. And in order to share your knowledge and your skills and your gifts, you need to live as long as possible and as well as possible. So get ready in the next season to hear more about lifestyle changes that will optimize your lifespan and your health span. Which now leaves me to simply wish you, as always, a happy, healthy day.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share. To learn more, please visit www.dralkapatel.com.